Imagine a sunny day suddenly turning into a sticky, sweet nightmare. That's precisely what happened in Boston on January 15, 1919, during an event known as the Great Molasses Flood. Now you might be wondering, a flood of molasses? Yes, you heard that right. A large storage tank burst, releasing over 2 million gallons of molasses into the streets of Boston. This unusual disaster was not only a mess of epic proportions, but also a tragic event that claimed lives and caused significant damage. The event holds a strange but significant place in Boston's history, serving as a reminder of the importance of safety regulations in industrial settings. This wasn't just a flood, it was a sticky disaster that brought about change in its wake. So, let's dive into this sticky mess and explore the events leading up to, during, and after the flood. The year was 1919. A time when Boston was bustling with industry and growth. The Roaring Twenties were just around the corner, and the city was a hive of activity. The end of the Great War had brought a sense of optimism and progress. Factories were running at full tilt, and new technologies were revolutionizing everyday life. Among the various industries flourishing, one particularly sweet sector was making waves. Molasses, a byproduct of sugar production, was a key player in Boston's industrial setting. Used not just in food, but also as a critical ingredient in manufacturing alcohol and munitions, it was a vital resource. Boston, the vibrant hub it was, had a bustling waterfront, teeming streets, and a growing population seeking opportunities. The city was a blend of residential and commercial areas, with factories often nestled close to neighborhoods. But with such rapid growth and industrialization, safety regulations struggled to keep pace. This lack of oversight would soon lead to a disaster that would go down in history as one of Boston's most bizarre and tragic events. One of these industries was the Purity Distilling Company, a key player in the molasses market. Little did the inhabitants of Boston know this seemingly harmless industry was about to cause a catastrophe that would change the city forever. The Purity Distilling Company was a major player in the molasses industry, which leads us to the colossal molasses tank. This company, a subsidiary of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, was the proud owner of an enormous tank that stood at a towering height of 50 feet and stretched about 90 feet in diameter. This molasses tank was no ordinary storage unit. It was a titan of industry, capable of holding a staggering 2.5 million gallons of molasses. The molasses stored in this gigantic tank wasn't destined for sweet treats. Instead, it was a crucial component for the production of industrial alcohol, a key ingredient in making munitions. The First World War had created an insatiable demand for this product, making the Purity Distilling Company and its molasses tank significant players in the wartime economy. But the construction of this tank was riddled with issues. Despite its size and the heavy load it was designed to bear, the tank was hastily and poorly built. The steel panels were half as thick as they should have been, and the rivets that held them together were feeble. Moreover, the tank was never properly tested before being put into service. A full structural test would have involved filling the tank with water to check for leaks. But in a rush to get the tank operational, the company opted for a shortcut and filled it with just 6 inches of water. The tank was situated in the densely populated North End neighborhood of Boston, surrounded by homes, businesses, and a playground. Over the years, residents reported leaks, but the company's response was merely to paint the tank brown, so the leaks became less noticeable. Little did anyone know that this massive tank, located in the North End neighborhood of Boston, would turn into a ticking time bomb. On January 15, 1919, a day etched in Boston's history, the molasses tank burst. It was just past noon, a typical winter's day in Boston. The North End neighborhood was bustling with activity, unaware of the impending disaster. The Purity Distilling Company's massive molasses tank, a familiar sight in the area, held a staggering 2.5 million gallons of molasses. This dark, sticky substance was a key ingredient in the production of industrial alcohol, an essential commodity during that era. On that fateful day, the temperature had risen significantly, following a cold spell. This sudden change in weather caused the molasses inside the tank to expand. Simultaneously, the tank, already filled to near capacity, came under immense pressure. The combination of these factors set the stage for a disaster of epic proportions. Without warning, the enormous tank ruptured. A wave of molasses, standing at an incredible 25 feet high and moving at a speed of 35 miles per hour, swept through the streets of the North End. The force was so strong that it damaged buildings, overturned vehicles, and even knocked the elevated railway off its tracks. People in the path of the molasses wave had no time to react. They were swept off their feet, trapped in the sticky mass that was rapidly flooding the streets. The area was plunged into chaos as the molasses wave wreaked havoc, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. In the immediate aftermath, the North End resembled a war zone. Streets were flooded with molasses, buildings were damaged or destroyed, and countless people were injured or worse. The city was in shock, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the disaster. The result was nothing short of catastrophic. In the blink of an eye, a wave of molasses engulfed the North End. The otherwise bustling neighborhood was instantly transformed into a sticky, chaotic mess. The deluge was merciless, leaving in its wake a trail of destruction that was both immense and horrifying. The flood of molasses was not merely a spectacle of unusual disaster. It was a cataclysmic event that brought with it a heavy toll of human suffering. It claimed 21 lives and injured around 150 people. Men, women, and children, caught unaware, found themselves trapped in the sticky onslaught, struggling for survival. The molasses seeped into every nook and cranny, creating a quagmire that made rescue efforts incredibly challenging. Despite the difficulties, the city's emergency services, alongside brave members of the community, threw themselves into the fray, determined to save as many lives as possible. They fought against the odds, working tirelessly to free those trapped in the mire. Their efforts, while heroic, were hampered by the sheer scale of the disaster and the unique challenges posed by the sticky flood. The immediate response from the city of Boston was a testament to the resilience and spirit of its people. The city rallied together, providing emergency care to the injured, shelter to the displaced, and solace to the bereaved. This concerted response showcased the strength of the community, even in the face of an unimaginable catastrophe. The disaster left a significant mark on Boston, both physically and emotionally. It was a tragic event that underscored the vulnerability of human life and the profound impact of industrial accidents on communities. But it also highlighted the resilience of the people of Boston, their capacity for compassion, and their unwavering resolve to rebuild and recover. In the wake of the disaster, questions swirled. How could this have happened? Investigations immediately followed, piercing through the sticky remnants of the catastrophe. The central focus of these inquiries was the massive molasses tank owned by the Purity Distilling Company. As the facts began to unravel, it became apparent that the failure of the molasses tank was not a random act of fate, but rather a tragic consequence of negligence and oversight. Engineering flaws were discovered in the tank's design and construction. The walls were deemed too thin to support the weight of the molasses, particularly when the tank was filled to capacity. Additionally, a lack of proper safety measures and inspection protocols further contributed to the disaster. During the legal proceedings that ensued, the Purity Distilling Company was held accountable. The court found that the company had failed to ensure the safety of their tank and had ignored warnings about its instability. This negligence led to the loss of 21 lives, numerous injuries, and significant property damage. The consequences for those responsible were severe. The company faced hefty fines, and the disaster led to a significant shift in industrial regulations and safety practices. New laws were enacted to prevent such incidents from happening again. These included stricter building codes, more rigorous inspection protocols, and a heightened emphasis on the safety of industrial structures. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919, though a tragedy, served as a wake-up call. It highlighted the dire consequences of negligence and the importance of safety in industrial operations. It was a harsh lesson, but one that brought about necessary changes, shaping the future of industrial safety in the United States. This disaster led to a significant shift in industrial regulations and safety practices. From the sticky ruins of the flood, a new era of caution and responsibility in industrial development was born. Cleaning up the sticky mess was no small task. Imagine a tsunami of molasses flooding the streets of Boston. The viscous substance seeped into every crevice, coated every surface, and clung stubbornly to everything it touched. The cleanup process was indeed a formidable challenge. Crews worked tirelessly, using salt water to dissolve the molasses and sand to absorb it. Despite their efforts, it is said that a sweet, syrupy scent lingered in the area for years after the incident. In the wake of this sticky disaster, Boston was forever changed. The loss of life and the widespread damage left a lasting imprint on the city. But it was not just the city's physical landscape that was altered. The Great Molasses Flood had a profound impact on industrial regulations and safety practices as well. The legal proceedings that followed the disaster led to a significant shift in the way companies were held accountable for their actions. It was one of the first major cases in which a corporation was found liable for the actions of its employees, setting a precedent for future industrial accident cases. This resulted in stricter safety standards and regulations for the construction and maintenance of industrial storage tanks, a legacy that continues to this day. The disaster also altered public perception. The shock and horror of the incident led to a heightened awareness of the potential dangers of industrialization. It underscored the need for rigorous safety measures and the importance of holding companies accountable for their actions. Yet the legacy of the Great Molasses Flood is not only of disaster and loss, but also of lessons learned and changes enacted. Today, the Great Molasses Flood is remembered as one of Boston's most unusual and impactful disasters. This peculiar incident has left an indelible mark on the city, influencing not only its history but also its present. Boston hasn't forgotten the Great Molasses Flood. In fact, the city has taken measures to ensure that this bizarre yet tragic event is remembered. A plaque in the North End neighborhood marks the location of the disaster, providing a sobering reminder of the 21 lives lost and the numerous others affected. Every year, locals and visitors alike stop by this memorial, reflecting on the incident and paying tribute to those who suffered. The plaque serves as a tangible link to the past, a silent testament to the resilience of the Boston community. But the legacy of the Great Molasses Flood extends far beyond a simple plaque. The disaster's aftermath led to significant changes in industrial safety regulations and practices, not just in Boston or the United States, but across the world. This event underscored the dire consequences of negligence and lack of oversight in industrial operations. It highlighted the urgent need for stringent safety standards and regular inspections to prevent such disasters. The flood stands as a pivotal moment in the broader context of industrial safety history, a catalyst for change that has undoubtedly saved countless lives since. In addition to its historical significance, the Great Molasses Flood has also permeated popular culture. It has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and even songs, further ingraining this event in the collective memory of the public. While the Great Molasses Flood was a tragic event, it serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of safety regulations in industrial operations. The Great Molasses Flood was more than just a bizarre event in Boston's history. It was a tragic disaster that unfolded on an ordinary January day in 1919, when a massive molasses tank ruptured and unleashed a sticky, deadly wave onto Boston's North End. The Purity Distilling Company, the owner of the tank, had to face the consequences of their engineering and design flaws, which led to this catastrophe. The immediate aftermath was devastating, with lives lost and numerous injuries. But the long-term impact was even more significant, leading to stringent industrial safety regulations and public awareness about industrial hazards. This sticky disaster, as tragic as it was, served as a wake-up call, prompting industries to prioritize safety over profits. So next time you find yourself enjoying a sweet molasses treat, spare a thought for the residents of Boston's North End in 1919 and the sticky disaster they endured.